Have you ever been talking to an AI and you get that feeling that it's just not listening anymore? We're going to dig into that specific frustrating moment when an AI seems to forget something you told it just a few minutes ago. You've probably been there. You start a chat, you give a clear instruction, and you think you're on the same page. But then, a few replies later, it feels like the AI has completely ignored what you asked it to do. So let's use a really simple everyday example. Imagine you tell an AI, hey, write everything in a formal academic tone. And for the first few responses, it's perfect. But as you keep chatting, that formal tone starts to, it just starts to fade away until it's gone completely. So what happened? We're going to break down exactly why this happens in 5 quick steps. We'll start with our expectation, then look at the mismatch with reality, get into the explanation, understand the trade-off, and finally, reach the resolution. Okay, so first up, let's talk about what we think should happen when we give a command. Our intuition, just based on how we talk to people, tells us that an instruction is a rule. You said it once at the beginning, and you just expect it to be followed for the rest of the conversation. It's like a standing order. But then, we see that something totally different happens in practice. That instruction, it just doesn't seem to stick around. What's really going on is a phenomenon researchers call context drift. And it's not a sudden mistake, it's more like a slow erosion of your original instruction. The request for that formal tone just gradually loses its grip as the conversation moves on. So why does this drift happen? Well, it's not because the AI has a bad memory or just plain forgot. It's all about a shift in priority. First, we gotta understand that the model sees the entire conversation as its context. Your first instruction, your follow-up questions, its own answers, it's all there in one big block. So technically speaking, nothing is ever really forgotten. But here's the key. The model doesn't treat every piece of that history equally. There's a core mechanism called attention that's always working, trying to figure out what's most relevant for what it needs to do next. It assigns these little importance scores or soft weights to everything in the conversation to decide where to focus. And here's the punchline. The system is designed to be super responsive to what you're asking for right now. Because of that, the attention mechanism gives the highest weight, the most importance to your newest prompt. So as a result, that original instruction about the formal tone, it's now buried a few turns back in the conversation history. It gets less and less weight. Its influence fades, not because it's gone, but because it's being out-prioritized by whatever you just asked. Now, this behavior isn't some kind of bug or mistake. It's actually a fundamental design trade-off that's baked right into the system. So what's being lost here is that strict long-term consistency. But what's gained is something else, high responsiveness. It's the flexibility to adapt to what you want in this immediate moment. It's built to be a dynamic partner, not a rigid rule follower. And what's really fascinating about this is that the drift doesn't just go on forever. Research shows the system eventually settles into what's called a bounded equilibrium. It finds a stable balance between your old instructions and your new ones. So it's not perfect consistency, but it's not a complete breakdown either. Okay, so let's bring all this home and make sense of that frustrating moment we started with. This brings us all the way back to our original question. When that formal tone disappeared, did the AI actually forget what you asked it to do? The answer is no. It didn't forget. That information wasn't lost. Your initial instruction was still right there in the conversation's context. Instead, its focus, its computational attention, was just reallocated. It was moved to what the system calculated was more important for the immediate task. And that's because this system is designed from the ground up to prioritize what you just said over what you said a while ago. It's always trying to give you the best possible answer to your very last question. And that right there shows why our human intuition about memory and rules kind of fails us here. The system isn't forgetting. It's constantly reevaluating its priorities. And once you understand that, its behavior, it starts to make a whole lot more sense.